This is Live Fire, with the latest news about threats to your liberties and your right to keep and bear arms. Our guests include elected and other public officials, journalists, citizen activists, and others who are fighting for the Bill of Rights, especially the Second Amendment. Remember, the issue is not just about gun control. It's about control.
Today I want to talk to Sheriff John Lopey. He is the sheriff of Siskiyou County in Northern California, up on the Oregon border. And it's the scene of a modern-day range war. We don't have gangs of outlaws swooping over the land. We have outlaws really of another sort, and some of them wear badges. Or represent those that do, from the federal government, who are exercising authority that can nowhere be found in the Constitution, but they're doing it anyway. And this is a matter that first came vividly to my attention thanks to the good work of Sheriff Richard Mack, who used to be the sheriff of a county in Arizona and is now the head of the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, and has been presenting sheriffs from around the country who are dealing with various kinds of illegitimate, unconstitutional actions by the federal government. Siskiyou County is one of the centers or epicenters of this modern-day war against the Constitution, and one of the sheriffs that's been standing up and interposing his office between the feds and his constituents is Sheriff John Lopey. Sheriff, thank you so much for being with us and for what you've been doing.
Oh, thank you, Larry. I appreciate you providing me the opportunity to be on your show. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, by the way.
Yes, sir, and to you. Since that's politically incorrect, we want to make sure we say that. So the idea first came to me to have the show at this time when I saw something come up that you had tried to buy a personal firearm and had not been able to pass the background check. And I thought, is this crazy or what? You've been a cop virtually all your life after serving in the military, now an elected sheriff of a county, and somehow you're not able to buy a firearm? Hello? What's going on?
Yeah, well, actually, that got straightened out, but I was unpleasantly surprised. I attempted to buy a M1 Garand rifle through the civilian marksmanship program, and as you know, the CMP has existed for many years, and they sell surplus military rifles and ammunition. And what happened is I've never had any problem, buying a firearm of any type. Obviously, my record's clean. I served in the armed forces off and on for about almost 38 years. I have 36 years in law enforcement. And what happened is you're familiar with the FBI NICS office, the
right.
National Instant Criminal Background Check System.
Wasn't so instant for you.
Yeah, well, it's the way I see it, I don't think they really were particularly picking on me, but it's a big, bureaucratic system.
Mm-hmm.
It's very impersonal and really doesn't care too much about, one's background or, what they do for a living. It was pretty disconcerting to me because obviously as a peace officer, I have to carry a weapon every day of my life. And what happened is they got me mixed up with someone with the same or similar name, or at least that's what they told me, and I had to submit, an appeal and a fingerprint card, and ultimately I got a letter back from them telling me that they ran my prints, and there was allegedly a felon with the same or similar name that they matched me up against, and the fingerprints affirmed that I had a clean record, and they cleared me to purchase my M1 Garand, and I'm happy to say that the CMP immediately filled my order after canceling it. I had to send another check.
We might observe that had that felon tried to get a gun, I doubt he would have gone through the NICS system and had his background checked. He would have gotten a gun the way criminals get guns all the time. And he would have, his getting a gun would have been a lot more instant than was yours.
Right. Yeah. And the thing is I talked to my congressman about it, my state senator and my state assemblyman. They're really great people, and they're great proponents of the Second Amendment. Doug Lamoff, my congressman, and Senator Jim Nielsen, and Assemblyman Brian Dolly. They are very concerned about it. And the primary concern I had was it's kind of a bureaucratic process. It's cumbersome to get through machinations, to get your appeal through. And I got emails from all over the country from people who were in the appeal process. And for some of those people, especially someone accused of some mental health care-related disorder or some of the other disqualifying criteria, it's a very, very long and complicated process, and it's difficult for some of these people to get through it. It's unfortunate, and I told my congressman that I was very concerned because we as public servants are supposed to serve the people, and we're supposed to follow the Constitution, of course. I mean that is a major role that or responsibility that we shoulder as public servants, and we're supposed to serve the people. And in my opinion, that means that federal, state, and local authorities should be responsive to the citizenry and treat them with dignity and respect. And they really kind of treat you like you're a guilty person until proven otherwise, and that was one of my main concerns. I like the FBI. I mean, I have a great working relationship with them in my region.
Well, I think you put your finger on the big problem, or a big problem with the background check. It rests on the assumption that we're all guilty until proven innocent. We can't exercise a constitutional right until this bureaucratic process finally concedes that, okay, I guess you're not guilty, which is not even the same as saying you're innocent.
Right, and Larry, I'll tell you, I also have a problem with, and I didn't ask for any special consideration. But to me, if you've been a peace officer for 36 years, I was a retired high-ranking officer in the Army. I was a Marine during the Vietnam era. I had a secret clearance in the Marines. I had a top secret clearance in the Army. You have those kind of credentials, a person with common sense probably would conclude it's unlikely that you are an ex-felon. I mean, and I think they should exercise a little bit more caution before they label somebody and automatically, put them in some prohibited class.
Amen to that.
I mean, that is very disturbing that they could do that. And what's also alarming to me is they give you very little explanation under the guise of the Privacy Act. They cite that, and they won't give you practically any information at all, and they're not even courteous about it.
That is
I
really
got a letter,
and
even the letter that I got from the FBI NICS office doesn't even have a name on it, and nobody signs the letter. When I send a letter out from my agency, most of the time I sign those letters. I put my name and my signature behind every decision we make as a governmental official and as an agency.
It's bizarre. You enter a kind of twilight zone, and as you say, who do you talk to? It's really an amazing process that they've set up, and I'm glad that you were willing to pursue it and talk about it, because I think it points to some of the problems that we've got with this system. Siskiyou County, California, a county that's been under siege from federal officials for some time. Sheriff, you've been, I think, performing an exemplary role in interposing yourself between your constituents and various federal law enforcement types, particularly from what you've told me is the problem, and interestingly, not so much a problem with the managers of the forest, but with the law enforcement types that are in your county. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what's been going on?
Well, we have. I don't have enough time to discuss all the issues going on in Siskiyou County, but essentially we have an ongoing struggle for our survival. As you know, or you may know, Siskiyou County is the fifth largest county geographically in the state of California. At one time, we were a very prosperous county because over 60% of our land is public land, and we had a thriving timber industry. In the early 80s, we had over 22 lumber mills, and now we have 2.
Now, is the timber on public land as well as private, or is the...
Yes, it's private and public. Most of the timber, traditionally has come from, Forest Service land through contracts, and
so it is harvested by private companies.
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that presumably means that's pretty good management.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. We have some timber sales on private land, but essentially what has happened because of primarily the spotted owl, the Endangered Species Act, most of the timber sales have not gone through. They've slowed considerably, and it is very difficult because every time a contract is let, you'll have some environmental extremist group jump in there and try to stop the sale, and sometimes they'll stall the sales until the timber is ruined. Right now, what has happened is,
and that's probably intentional, the stalling, so that.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And what it has done, and people say, well, why are you getting involved in this? Well, there are laws that are sometimes not being followed. Obviously the Constitution is in play here because you're talking about one's right to earn a decent living and due process and things of that nature. You're talking about the public trust. You're talking about the from a sheriff's perspective. I'm just so disheartened because instead of prosperity, in our communities, and the thing is, we have timber here. It used to be the primary industry. Then we had ranching and farming. Well, now ranching and farming is the primary industry and revenue generating activity in the county, and we also have mining and recreation. Well, because of the Endangered Species Act and because of many of these environmental activists and many of these policies initiated by various federal and state agencies, there's a threat. I mean, mining is being curtailed significantly. Timber harvesting is being curtailed, and ranching and farming is being threatened because now there's a movement to get more water from ranchers and farmers for the like the coho salmon. I mean, we're under siege. There's a big movement to remove 4 dams along the Klamath River, which would potentially be catastrophic on our economy and public health and safety too, because the federal and state agencies that have orchestrated this proposal have yet to explain, how we're going to deal with 21 million cubic tons of hazardous waste, that would be released, should those dams go down.
I see this as part of the wilding notion that somehow untrammeled Mother Nature is best, and having dominion over the earth is just a really bad idea, shouldn't be allowed. This is really...
Right. But, there's also, and I'm not the only sheriff doing that. Every sheriff I know of in the North State is struggling with the same issues, maybe not quite as intense, but, we have lamented to some of these agencies, and it's usually the agencies that don't even belong in our county. I mean, they're in some other issues with the National Oceanic Atmospheric Agency, the EPA, the Corps of Engineers. Some of these agencies, the North Coast Regional Water Control Board, sometimes agencies that don't even have people or very few people assigned to my county will come into my county in response to environmental activist complaints and try to wreak havoc here. And my concern is
so people that don't live in your county, I'll bet these activists are the ones that are pulling the trigger.
Right. And the latest issue is trying to, the state may reintroduce the northern gray wolf in our county. And that's another example. We've got all these activists down in the Bay Area and other places that are going to these U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service meetings trying to push this proposal to get reintroduce wolves, which would have a devastating impact on our ranching and farming industry, because wherever these wolves have been reintroduced, the depredation rates are just catastrophic to local ranches and farms. And another thing is, what most sheriffs are concerned about is the coordination laws that are required pursuant to provisions like the National Environmental Policy Act, the Data Quality Act, the Regulatory Flexibility Act, and other provisions of law are not always being followed by some of these agencies. They come in here, they ask for input, but a lot of times, like with the travel management plan, another issue that we're grappling with the Forest Service. And the thing is the two issues that are potentially catastrophic for us is just the forest management issues, and a lot of these policies are enacted on the state level in Sacramento or the national level in Washington, D.C., and these people that are enacting these policies have no idea what is really going on the ground.
Right,
and then what we have is we have these forests that are overgrown. We have 10 times the fuels that are acceptable in forestry terms. We have the potential for catastrophic wildland fires. Plus, you have more trees sucking up the water, and then we have some of these groups coming in wanting more water for endangered species like the coho salmon.
When we were talking before the show, you had mentioned that the county, probably the whole northern part of the state, was essentially a wasteland until settlers came and began to tame it and to make something really beautiful out of it. And these folks in Sacramento and Washington have no clue that all that has happened.
Well, and Larry, I'll tell you, the ranchers and farmers, I'm not a rancher, I'm not a farmer, but the ranchers and farmers of Siskiyou County are the hardest working people I ever saw. And they are the best environmentalists. They know more about the ecology, as far as I'm concerned, than all the governmental scientists put together, because the farmers and ranchers make more sense, and they live off the land.
Exactly.
And they know
Their
how to take care of the land.
That. Yeah.
Right.
They get it wrong, right. They go broke.
Absolutely right.
Talking today about a federal government, state government that seems to be guided more by theories of people who really aren't connected with the reality that they're supposedly concerned about protecting. Environmental activists have gotten control of many of the levers of government power in Sacramento and in Washington. And Sheriff John Lopey of Siskiyou County has been telling us this doesn't work very well. There's been, I would imagine, there's been an increase in people receiving welfare benefits in your county because the major industry has been hammered by these activists that really don't know what they're talking about.
Well, what concerns me is, counties like Siskiyou, a once prosperous county, is now, a shadow of its former self. Well, we have pretty high welfare rates. We have some of the highest domestic violence rates.
I was going to say, I bet the impact on families is just terrible.
Yeah, child abuse, elder abuse, alcohol abuse, drug abuse. Our communities are absolutely devastated, and the economy here is much worse than in other parts of the country. And some of our political leaders. And again, I must say that I get along with my political leaders here because they're great representatives of the people, and they're very supportive of me, and I'm supportive of them. And I get along with the majority of federal and state agencies in my county as well, because right now, my perspective is that I'm not trying to get federal and state agencies out of my county. I'm just trying to establish a dialogue, stand up for my people, and fix these problems. And right now, we do have a dialogue with most of these agencies. Some of them are hostile, especially the ones that are from outside the county, but we're attempting to make some positive changes, and we're attempting to stand up for our people. And my constituents are great people in Siskiyou County, but they're struggling to get by. And the crime rates and the abject poverty that arises because of these policies and regulatory provisions are just devastating to counties like mine. It's very sad when people are growing marijuana or using methamphetamine, heroin's coming back, instead of going out there and working in a local mill or some other business, because many of them are going under.
So the folks that work for us, that we pay their salaries, these officials from various state agencies, federal agencies, really many of them seem to view us as the enemy, and particularly you in a county that's kind of an outdoors type county. A lot of the employment being, as you've already described, people working in the timber industry, fishing, whatever, recreation. You're the enemy, and they're trying to shut you down.
Well, let's put it this way. A lot of my constituents see some of the regulatory agencies as caring more about fish, frogs, trees, and birds than they do about people, and that's a sad commentary on what's going on. And I got to emphasize that I get along with most of the agencies in my county, including the Forest Service, the some of the state agencies, like the North Coast Regional Water Control Board, it's the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, they changed their name to align themselves with their federal partners. We are engaged in an ongoing dialogue, but many of these agencies, like the Fish and Wildlife Service at the state level, instead of emphasizing the enforcement of Fish and Game Code violations, they're getting into a lot of these land management and water management issues.
Totally outside even their legal.
Well, we're under siege, but we are working to resolve these issues. And I must say, my board of supervisors and our resource specialists and our county administrator, they're all on board. A lot of it is education. A lot of people do not realize what's going on, and a lot of the laws that are passed, they sound good, but when it comes to implementation or practice or good common sense, a lot of that's gone out the window when it comes to rural America. Rural America is being threatened, and it's threatened with extinction, in my estimation.
I'm afraid you're right, and you're there at ground zero. You're seeing it happen, and it's very alarming to hear these reports. I'm glad we have a chance to air this. You have pointed out that these activists, when they get involved, maybe they come into your county or maybe they just sick state and federal officials on you, but they seem to have an attitude. They're kind of rude.
What I feel, again, I want to emphasize the fact that public servants should have a attitude of service to the people. When we stop serving the people and we stop looking at every individual citizen as being important, we're in big trouble. And right now, some regulatory agencies are impersonal, they're arrogant, and they're not operating always in the best interests of the people that they are supposed to serve. When you talk to somebody, when you call a governmental representative on the phone, they should treat you with dignity and respect. And that's not happening in all these cases. I had a rancher in Scott Valley, a prominent rancher. This thing has been running battle for about 2 years. NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Agency, Office of Law Enforcement, a special agent with a gun and a badge shows up at his ranch and wants to investigate a alleged violation of the Endangered Species Act because
no warrant, just presents himself.
Right. He had a few coho salmon fingerlings allegedly died in a puddle in a creek that goes dry every year. And a environmental activist has sent repeated letters of complaint to that agency. That agency is supposed to be primarily on the coast, and they enforce provisions of the law for the National Marine Fisheries Act. I did some research on them because we had, to their credit, when I challenged them on being here in the county, they didn't notify me. They're very generally courteous when I talked to the agent, and their bosses came up from Long Beach, but their attitude is, hey, you know what? We're basically a federal agency, and we're going to do what we want. And they're still going after that rancher and farmer. They tried to go a criminal complaint, but now they're going administrative. They're trying to go through an administrative process, and they want to fine them $8,000. And then they came back again, and he committed. There are 2 heinous violations that were reported by an environmental activist. And oh, by the way, the environmental activists in many cases are gathering this alleged evidence, questionable evidence, illegally because they're trespassing on the land and allegedly taking video and photos.
Right.
A cow urinated in a creek, and he was dredging out a dry creek bed, something his family has done for 5 generations.
And by the way, deer never urinate in a creek, right?
Right. And they're trying to fine them administratively $8,000. And that same family called me up once and said, hey, I've got a few agencies that want to visit me. I said, well, what agencies? North Coast Regional Water Control Board, the California, at that time, the Fish and Game, although they were just going along, they weren't part of the enforcement action. NOAA, the Office of Law Enforcement, the EPA, and the Corps of Engineers. And I said, why are they visiting you? Well, they said that they were responding to a complaint. And I called the representative of the North Coast Regional Water Control Board. I said, what's going on here? And she said, well, they may need another permit. Even though they had a permit from the Fish and Game for a stream bed alteration, these other agencies were going after them to make them get other permits. I said, well, how many permits does a rancher have to make a decent living? And she said, I said, how much are these permits? And her answer, was, well, they can be spendy. I said, oh, spendy. Well, that's a real specific response to my question.
Right.
But in any event, those are the kind of things that are going on.
And of course, the rancher certainly has had to retain legal counsel. And there goes cha-ching, yes. Cha-ching, cha-ching.
Yeah.
We're heading into the break. We're going to be back with another segment with Sheriff John Lopey of Siskiyou County, California. The war against the West, it's really underway, folks. It's crazy. We've been talking about the toll that's being taken on ranchers, timbermen, others, mainly all people that work out of doors, work the land. They're under siege by people who evidently don't believe that mankind ought to be having the earth under dominion and are willing to trespass, to illegally obtain information, turning it over to government agencies, as you were describing, Sheriff, in the last segment, who readily accept illegally obtained information, and on that basis, without any corroboration, start sticking it to, or continue sticking it to, the constituents that you have in Siskiyou County. This is, it's very Alinskyite, if you will, sicking people against each other and encouraging a lawlessness to fuel an agenda from these various government agencies. It's stunning.
Yes, it's it's kind of overwhelming too for the citizens involved, because man, I can tell you that ranchers and farmers and other people are just struggling to make a living, especially with the economy here. And I also should add that the unemployment rate in Siskiyou County is probably close to 20%. It's much higher here than it is in other parts of the state of California and the nation. And
a lot higher than it is where Gun Owners of America is located, in a Washington suburban county, where we're doing very well, thank you very much. We're one of the highest income counties in the country, probably the world. And we sucked it right out of Siskiyou County in part.
Well, yeah, and there are other counties. I mean, there are other counties in Northern California that are struggling, and certainly in Oregon, I've got a contiguous county, Josephine County, because of diminished timber receipts and also the compensation that the federal government promised counties, which is now almost totally gone. Gil Gibertson up there, the sheriff up there, he's lost about 70% or more of his sheriff's office. Oh. I mean, he has practically very little capability to perform the functions of his department. And there are many counties in Oregon that are ready to go under. I mean, literally, they're bankrupt or close to it because
and it's not because of fiscal. It's not fiscal mismanagement. It's the decline, as you just said, of receipts from industries that can no longer function.
Right, and the thing is what really disturbs rural California, I mean, at least in my county, is that the timber industry is, timber is a renewable resource. It's very simple. You cut the dead and dying trees down, you reduce the chance of encountering these catastrophic wildland fires, and then when you cut the tree down, you plant some more. So it's a renewable resource. You never lose that resource. Yet, some of these environmental activists, they don't want any forest timber, harvesting at all. And then the forests, when they burn, they completely burn down, and oftentimes our forests are completely devastated, and also people get killed, structures are destroyed, and it's nonsense.
So the very intentions that these environmentalists have had to, quote unquote, save the forest end up being entirely counterproductive.
Well, it's very counterproductive, and it defies common sense. And quite frankly, some of these stem from the policies we have. And I'm not, and you know what's ironic too is that people in Siskiyou County, we love the environment. We want to preserve the environment just as much as anybody else.
Yeah, you got to live in it.
Right, because we love where we live, and like I said, ranchers and farmers and the people here, we're the best stewards of the land. Yet we have, these environmental. I believe, and I never would have believed this when I took office. It was a real eye opener. I didn't think I'd get involved in all these issues involving land and water management. But I believe that there is a movement to shut down ranching and farming, shut down all timber. I think that there are organizations that would love for Siskiyou County to be a giant nature preserve.
I think you're right. I think that's unhappily what is really at play here. You made an interesting point when we were talking before the show that the spotted owl, which is the one of the major heartthrobs of environmentalists, has actually benefited from forestry. How is that?
Well, I was recently attending a coordination meeting down at Happy Camp, and Happy Camp used to have about 6 lumber mills, and now they have none. And they're one of the most devastated county communities in existence. And the spotted owl, they just issued another, a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service just distributed a spotted owl restoration plan, which is going to close off areas in the Happy Camp area to timber harvesting. And right now, the forests are so overgrown that it is actually adversely impacting the spotted owl because they can't see their prey. If they thinned out the forest, it would make it healthier. It would raise the water table, for the fish, and the spotted owl would be healthier. You ask these officials if they could approve that all the millions of dollars and the devastation wrought upon counties like Siskiyou has even helped the coho salmon or even helped the spotted owl, the chances are they can't even give you any empirical evidence to support that premise.
And Sheriff, let me guess, I'll bet the spotted owl doesn't really do well when the forests burn down.
No, the spotted owl is destroyed just like all the other habitat.
It's just incredible.
You talk to people about that. Some of these active. And there's nothing wrong with supporting environmental renewal and restoration and sustainment. But there's so many extremists. They say, well, that's a natural phenomenon. Oh, it's a natural phenomenon for the forest just to burn down and destroy everything in its path, and including and people get killed. And like I mentioned, the structures are burned. I mean, that is just ridiculous when we could prevent it through proper forest management. And we have groups in Siskiyou County that are attempting to sponsor legislation, and Doug LaMalfa, our congressman, is attempting to do just that. Tom McClintock has been a great supporter of the North State, and all we're asking for is reasonable, common sense forest management practices, which as far has not been forthcoming.
Also, you had told me of another county, Catron County, New Mexico, where wolves have been, I guess, either reintroduced or put on the protected list, and they've become such a menace that kids have to wait for the school bus in cages.
Right. Catron County has had a wolf problem since '98 when they were introduced, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, according to the sheriff there that I talked to in great length, told them that, hey, people would flock to your county. The economy's going to get better because people are going to just come to your county to see these beautiful animals, and wolves are beautiful animals. But the depredation rate amongst the cattle and the stress that is imposed upon the herd and also the ranchers and farmers is so devastating. It has a catastrophic impact on their economy and public health and safety. And then they have wolves that are lurking in neighborhoods and suburbs and around ranches and farms. And wolves will kill not only to eat, but some wolves kill because they like killing. And the depredation rate down there is around 15%. And I have read where depredation rates in some states like Montana is as high as 30%. If you ask a rancher and farmer, they'll tell you that is enough to put them, out of business.
The Bill of Rights protects every American's God-given right to keep and bear arms. Now that right is being seriously undermined as legally registered rifles are being confiscated in some parts of our country. If we're not careful, we may find ourselves with no right to own guns. And that's where Gun Owners of America comes in. Gun Owners of America is in Washington every day fighting for you to keep that right. Congressman Ron Paul has called GOA the only no-compromise gun lobby in Washington. You need to be part of this great grassroots group of activists who are keeping the heat on their members of Congress. Find out right now how you can join. Call 888-886-GUNS and get started receiving their fact-filled newsletters and action alerts. Call 888-886-GUNS or go to their webpage at gunowners.org and help make your voice heard in Washington. Make that call right now and call Gun Owners of America at 888-886-GUNS. Remember, it's not just about gun control, it's about control.